All right, I just started recording. I will be sharing this recording with everyone after the call as well, as soon as I make sure it's fit this time, because it's probably going to be a large file.
Great. Okay. So sorry, can I just introduce Christina? For those of you who don't know, she's my transaction manager in Germany.
Okay.
So,
hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
And from our group, Sue, you've probably worked with Kit before, right? Have you talked to Kit?
I have indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And Jeanette. Jeanette just started the end of August with us. And we also have John Napolitano. You've probably worked with John as well.
I have indeed. Great. Yeah. Good. Thank you.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Arthur. I work with Sue and Jennifer on the support side of the TRIRIGA installation here. And I will be doing my best here to help you understand reports better. Sue, I was discussing a little bit before you jumped on. I want to make sure I'm on the same page as you guys. From our discussions in the past, my understanding is that you guys have a good grasp on reports. You just need some clarification on how to find the information you want, and how to associate it and bring it into your reports. I plan on starting from the ground up and going through all the details of reports, just in case there's something you might have missed that could benefit you. So I'm going to go through all the details about reporting, all the intricacies and whatnot. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. So let's start at the top. The reporting function in TRIRIGA. It's obviously used to create reports and to aggregate data and make it more easy to read and compare. Make sure everything looks okay, or get data you need for other reports. The reports are located on the My Reports tab. You guys should all be able to see this at least. There are 4 different tabs. There's My Reports, the Community Reports, System Reports, Administration. The 2 most used tabs that are used by most end users are the My Reports tab and the Community tab. The System Reports and the Administration are usually reserved for administrative users. So the My Reports tab is specific to the person who's accessing them. Being an administrator, you see all 4 tabs here. The My Reports, you'll see that you can copy reports from other locations, and they come to your My Reports tab. One thing to note about the My Reports tab is if there are any updates to a report that you have copied over, they don't automatically carry over. So if you have an old report in here, for example, and some updates are made, you need to go back and recopy it into your report section. Community reports are ones that are automatically kept up to date based off of the report's changes, and these are gathered from the System Reports tab. And the Administration tab is a separate tied-off section, if you will. These reports only exist on this tab. They cannot be put on the System Reports tab or the Community tab. You can copy them to the My Reports tab, though, if you have access to it.
Okay, but presumably none of us have access to administration, Arthur.
Okay, okay. All right. So that's the location of the reports and a quick breakdown of the difference between these couple tabs. When you're creating a new report, you'll most likely be doing it in System Reports. So under the System Reports tab, we click on the new button at the top, and we'll get a window to fill in and complete with the data we want to name the report after. So for naming a report, there's a couple different fields at the top here. The name field is the actual, it's not the forward-facing name. It's like the technical name, if you will. There are some conventions that are best followed when naming these. Here at CFI, when we create custom reports, if they plan on being, customer-facing for you guys, we always preface them with a custom note. So we use Hertz for Hertz, HTZ. And then we always follow it up with the business object that you're querying against down here, whichever one we select. Just to make an example.
Okay, yeah, just appreciate that nobody has ever told us this before, Arthur. So,
okay. Yeah, I'm going to go through. Yes.
I have a question. Where did you object?
To add the business object down here, you mean?
Yeah,
or to add a new report?
You just explained that you name your report, HTC for Hertz, and then you select the business object, and I didn't see where you selected this one.
Oh, so we click on the Add Business Object link in the top right of the Business Object section down here. And this is just an example to help us figure out a name here that makes sense. So I'm going to pick real estate.
Arthur,
yes.
can you just try and talk a little bit slower?
Sure, I'm sorry. All right.
People are writing, I think.
Yeah, not only for people that are writing. The more you get into it, the faster you talk. It's sometimes a bit difficult to follow.
All right, sorry about that. I will try to talk slower here.
Thank you.
And I do apologize if it sounds a bit unnatural. All right, so back to the business object here. We need to, let's jump back. So we select the Add Business Object link here at the top right of the business object section, if you will. That'll bring up a form for us to follow through and find the business object and the corresponding form that we want to pull data from. So I'm going to choose the module Try Contract, and I'm going to find the business object, which is contained within the module. I'll explain the module and business object relationship a bit later on when we go through how to find the data that you want. But for now, just understand that modules contain business objects, and they all are semi-similar. So I will choose real estate contract. And for your data, you're going to want to pick the corresponding form that you're looking for. If it's an owned property fee agreement, whatever it might be. In this case, we want the real estate lease. And that'll make sure that it pulls all the correct fields for us to query. So once we do that, we now know what business object we are querying against, and that's what we're going to add after our name here. So we'll add Try Real Estate Contract. And these are naming conventions that come from TRIRIGA. These are recommended ones. You're more than welcome to create your own. So we have now the identifier for the custom, which is the 3-letter Hertz symbol here. Then we have the business object itself, Try Real Estate Contract. And then we need to give a short description of what kind of information we're going to be bringing in. Just to make this simple, I'll name it lease IDs. So we're just going to pull in lease IDs. The ID field here is if you want to give it a numerical ID. I personally never use it. Most people don't look up reports by ID number, but you are more than welcome to use one if you'd like. I'll just put one in there for now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The tag section here is used to give it's best used to give a single one-word identifier for what kind of report this is. The most common one is custom, and usually used in all caps. But
we've been using HTZ for our reports.
There you go. So you can use that as well. You might also see, depending on the application, you could also see workflow if it's used in a workflow on the back end. There's usually stuff that you wouldn't want to change, or just integration, for example. But we'll use HTZ then. And the header title is the actual forward-facing name that you see when the report is run. It'll be in the top left corner of the report. Usually, I just use the short description I gave at the end of the name. If you want to give more information, you can. And then description is a short description of what the report returns if you'd like to fill it out. So this returns these IDs. All right. Going on now, there are a couple different types of reports. So I'm just going to go through the list, and we'll go into each one individually after that. So there's a report, a query, graphic, summary, chart, external, and so on here. There are most of these for reporting usages from your end are most likely not going to be used. The two you're most interested in are reports and queries. They return data in a table-like format, depending and according to the constraints you apply in the filters and so on. There is no effective difference between the functionality of a report and a query, except for some back-end stuff that regarding development. So if you're creating a report, I would stick with a report, and you'll be just fine. The graphic reports are used in CAD integration. So if you have floor plans showing up on any properties, you can create special graphic reports to help label the data that you want to come through. The summary report shows totals of the specific fields that you want to bring up without showing any much other details. The chart will help you make a, like a bar chart or even a pie chart based on data provided. The reserve legacy and reserve reports are unused. I would ignore them. Hierarchy reports are used to display information that comes in a hierarchy format. The best example I have of that is locations. So you would have like a country that breaks down into a state or a province that breaks down into a city. Hierarchy is used to display that information, and you can break it down while looking at the report there. And the metric is used to aggregate data, say data from a bunch of chart reports. If you combine data and compare it. So for this, we'll be sticking with the regular report. And then the data scope. There are 3 different data scopes: active project, company, and all projects. The active project only shows data available in the selected project. That's something that the capital projects team would use more often. You guys would be more interested in where it's located. The company data scope shows data that is only located outside of a project. From my experience, company is almost never used in reporting. It's either active project or all projects. In your case, we would most likely be using all projects to make sure we look at all of the data available. Is there a phone call?
Sorry, it's somebody else in the office. I'll put it on mute.
No worries. All right. And then we're going to go through the options here when setting up a report. This checkbox here shows community report. Very straightforward. If it's checked, it will add a copy of the report into the community tab here. And like I said, it will be kept up to date. Any changes you make on the system report will transfer to the community report. One thing you notice as well is that community reports are not editable. You have to find the related system report and update it there. So I will leave this as a community report so we can see it showing up in that list. Next, we have some options. We have the random result count. If you have a large amount of data and you're not particularly interested in getting a certain set of data, you just want some data to show that either random sets look okay, or whatever the reason might be. You can set this to any number above 0, and you'll get that many results returned randomly. If it's set to 0, it returns the full list. The fixed column count lets you set up to 5 fixed columns starting from the left that will not scroll when you're looking through the data, similar to like freezing some columns in Excel. The result size sets the default returned result size. These are the amount of records returned before we have to click on the button to go to the next page. This can be changed after runtime. So let's say I set it to 10 and I run the report. When I run the report, I'll have another drop down there where I can choose to see more if I'd like. But this sets the default. If it's set to none, I believe it returns 50 by default. The Excel template. Sue, this is what I was talking. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it just had some background noise that cut it out. Define the result size real quick once again. It tells you.
Result size. It's the amount of results returned per page. So if say there's 10,000 records, it's not going to show you all 10,000 at once. It's going to show you this
however many
here
per page.
Yep, and you can change this after you run the report. This is the default. When you run the report, if it's set to 10 and you want to see 50, there's going to be a drop down on the report that you can click and expand on.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry about that.
No problem. The Excel template. Sue, this is what I referred to in the meeting. I'm doing more investigation on this, but a brief description of what this is, and I apologize, it's something I haven't utilized. It lets you upload an Excel template, an Excel document, in the report when it's run will fill out the template with the data. This sounds like something what you're looking for, and it returns it in an HTML format.
Okay.
So this sounds like what that request was about, and I will keep you guys updated after this meeting with more information I find out about this, because it's something I have not used before.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Yep. Prompt before query. This, if there is a large amount of data returning, and you have some filters on there that you want the user to run, you can have this checked off, and it won't run the report immediately. It'll wait for the user to actually apply some filters before doing a search. It's best used if you're in a large data set and you want to chop it down a little bit before actually doing the search. An editable query. Editable queries lets you change data right from the report. Editable report, editable query, right from the report. If you check this button to yes, you'll choose a state that the record will be in. For example, these all correspond to a certain state the record's in, whether the issue is active, retired is retired, processing, and so on. This automatically limits the search to records within this state. When you choose this state, like I said, you get to choose fields that you want to edit and change right from the query or report. You also are allowed to bring in actions that you would see on the record in that state. So for example, if you were bringing in draft ones, you could also choose to import an action to the report to let you run, like check off 4 different records and activate them right from the report if you so choose. And that is something that I will show you guys in a little bit. All right, any questions there?
Nope.
All right, moving on to related reports. So there is a section on the report after you run it that lets you switch between related reports. Say if you wanted to make a couple different editable reports, one for draft, one for active, and so on, you can add those other reports here, and it'll let you switch between reports just by clicking on the drop-down and choosing it. So you don't have to go back to the report manager or wherever your reports may be to actually switch between the reports. Clicking on add, and it's blocked. Okay. I have to save this first. So if I wanted to add another report, it doesn't have to be similar at all. You can add completely unrelated reports to each other if you so choose. I'll choose something from log, for example. If I wanted to see visitor logs from this report as well, for whatever reason, you can click on OK, and that report will be selectable from this report. So you can switch between them with ease. Okay. Going on to security. You can limit who can see what reports according to the security groups they are assigned to. If there's no group selected, then all groups have access to at least view it. And you can define specific.
Arthur, may I interrupt you?
Yeah.
I have a cut of my internet access, so I have a frozen screen now. Do I have to go out and come back to the net meeting? Because my internet access basically is here where I am in the office. But
I would recommend reconnecting to the GoToMeeting, yeah. Is anyone else having any issues with seeing the screen?
No, I can see your screen fine.
I would recommend reconnecting then, yeah.
Maybe you can move the mouse. Maybe you can try again, whether you are up again.
I'm moving a window around the screen right now. Do you see it moving?
Yeah.
Yep.
No.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I'll be back in the screen in a while, and I keep the telephone up. That's okay, right?
Yep.
I'm sorry, guys, that I'm holding you up, but the restart takes a couple of seconds or maybe a minute.
Sue, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. I was just looking at the attendees, and you're not. It doesn't look like you're active, but you're there.
Promise I'm here.
As long as you're there, that's all that matters.
Yeah, it's showing. I can see it on mine.
It's fine. Just figured if one was having trouble, to make sure no one else is either.
No, you can't get rid of me that easily, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's good.
All right. It appears to be working now.
Yep. You see the window moving?
Yes.
All right. So, like I was saying, the security tab here, it lets you add restrictions based on security groups that people are assigned to. For example, I will add the administrative group here. And this means that only they can see it. You can only view this report. If you add more, you can add more people who are able to see this. If you take them all away, all groups have access.
Okay, that's interesting.
All right, so we are not done with the basic setup of our report. We've named it. We selected what we want to look up, and we've set any options we wanted to set. We don't want any random results. We don't need any fixed columns just yet. Result size, we can leave at default. We'll actually change it to 100. We'll leave that there. Prompt before query is not something we need. We'll leave it in the editable state, so I can demonstrate to you guys some of the actions. I won't be performing any actions, but I'll just show you how to put them in there and how they work. We don't have any related reports that we need to show, and everyone should be able to see this report. So our security is empty. Moving on to the columns tab. this is where you would select the columns and the fields that you wish to show. The fields show up as the columns. You will see a whole bunch of information here. This comes from the form that we selected, all of these fields. These fields align most of the time with exactly what you see on the form. So I'll show you what I mean by that. If I just open up a lease, for example, if the ID field's easiest. So here's the ID field. You can see that there is an ID field here, lease ID. The names are can be a little different, and I'll show you how to verify if you're picking the right field later on. And so in this report, I want to return the ID and let's say the name, just to keep it simple for now. So in this list, it is alphabetical, starting with the field label itself. By default, I just unchecked that. There we go. It's alphabetical by field label by default. You can sort by these if you'd like by clicking on these triangles and circles. I will go back to alphabetical here, and I'll look for name. You can either search through the list, or you can also use the find function that is provided by Internet Explorer by pressing and see if I can find the name. So we don't want the building name. We don't want the complex name. Guarantor. Legal name. There we go. Just regular old name. So once we find the field we want, click the check mark to add it to the list, and it will display on the right-hand side. Here you can set the, you can again further change the label. Like we see the ID on the lease is labeled lease ID. So I would recommend changing your report to match. Change it to lease ID. And name, I believe, is just name, so that one should be okay. And this is going to query all of the leases within the system at the moment. If we want, we can change the width of the columns in respect to each other. So if you have, 50 and 60, it won't work. It will default both to 50. By default, they're a blank, which means they all take up equal amounts of space. And if you want to make the field editable, since we have chosen this to be an editable query, we need to check the box next to it. I'll check the name. We don't need to change the ID. And once we have edited all the fields we want, we save the record so we can move on to the next tab. Any questions?
So did we now create one column of our report?
We have two columns now. So each field we select is a column.
Okay. Okay.
Basically, all you're saying about the width is it'll self-determine when you leave it blank.
Yeah. It'll do equal space for each one. All right. So moving on to order and group. Very straightforward. You can either group by the lease ID or the name, or order by lease by ID or name. In this case, we will order by the name in ascending. So you select the field you want, and these arrows here are for ascending and descending, or to move one back that you don't want to sort by anymore. If you add multiple fields to sort by, it will do them in the order from top to bottom. So for example, if I name it lease ID, it'll sort by name first, and then by lease ID after that. Group by, if you are looking up a lot of information that say there's multiple parts of information per lease, and you'll see, soon Jennifer probably seen this, you'll see duplicates seem to show up. if you want to remove some duplicates, you can also group by the object, the lease ID or the name, and it'll list the name, and then it'll list all the information associated to that name before listing another name. And then the summary columns, if you have any numerical fields that you are reporting on, you'll have an option to add a sum to the fields, and it'll be at the bottom of the report. We'll add them all together for you. Any questions?
So how did you add something to the summary columns? So if you want to...
So you have to pick a field that's numerical.
That's numeric. If we have rent, for example, which probably opens another can of worms.
Yeah, I'm going to see if I can do a simple one here. Whoops, filters. Yeah, so I just picked internal headcount for the lease. If you just check the box, it'll summarize it at the bottom. I'll leave that on there to see what happens. I'm not sure if you guys use that field, but we'll see how it comes. So I added a numerical field and added a new column in the process. It added it in the middle, and then being a numerical field, you can tell it to summarize it at the bottom by checking the sum box on the order and group page. All right. Filters. This is where you add filters to the report. You can impose system filters, which are filters that the user doesn't have any interest in them being there, and user filters, which is the filters that the user types in their own criteria to search by. So these two checkboxes, the one on the left are user filters, and one on the right are system filters. So let's think here. For example, let's go down to the name. I'm just going to find it here. If you check each box, you'll see on the side here that there are user filter columns and system filter columns.
Oh, I'm sorry, once again, what was the difference between the user and the system?
User filters are ones that the user is able to type their own criteria in and search by or query by. System filters are filters that are imposed by the creator of the report that cannot be edited. Okay. At least when the report's run. You have to edit them before you run the report in this screen here.
Just to put a bit of context around that, on our reporting, for example, for the user filter, we would do things like region, so that when you run a report, you could choose just to run it by region.
Okay.
But on the system filters, for example, if we're just setting up a report that's purely for North America, we would set up a system filter that said, just look at data for North America, Canada, and Virgin Islands.
Okay.
Yeah?
Got it.
Spot on, Kim. All right. So as you add these, once again, the left checkbox, just go to the top, you can see the left is labeled user, tiny. The right is labeled system. So the left checkbox is to add user filters. The right checkbox is to add system filters. And then we see them appear on the right-hand side of the screen when we check that box. And when I uncheck them, you can see them disappear and come back and so on. For the user filters, they're very straightforward. There's not much configuration. With this being a text field, we can set a few operators on the field. So if you want to just do a basic search, say we want to make sure we want to find a word that exists within the name field, we would leave this as contains. There's also contains to be case sensitive. So we're looking up the name that contains whatever the user writes in it. We can look up, equals or not equals, starts with. These are pretty self-explanatory until you get into the in and not in. They in and not in are very similar to equals or not equals, but lets you list multiple values. For user filters, I would not recommend using in or not in. I would stick with equals or not equals if you want something like that. Any questions about these? They're straightforward, except for in or not in, and I'll give you a demonstration on that in the system filters. All right. So the system filters, these have a few more options. You can see that there's some join operators, and then there's some parentheses here and here. So if you were to add multiple filters, you can set up multiple, what's the word, searches here. So you can, if you were to add, let's add another one here. So see how we can only include one system filter by checking this box? If we want to add more, we can select the system filter on the right-hand side and then copy it. So now we have the same system filter for this field twice. And now we'll have more options as well. So the join operator, we can choose and, or, and not, or not. This defines how this specific operator, the second one, interacts with the first one, the one before it. So here we can see that my screen keeps refreshing. Sorry, I'm not sure why it's doing that. We can see that the name, we're imposing a system filter that the user cannot edit, is contained. And we'll make sure the name contains the letter A, for example. In here, this is again parentheses if you want to wrap it up. So if you want to make sure yes.
Sorry, for our purposes, Arthur, we would use something like this if we were, for example, wanting to search on a couple of cities.
Yeah. So let me, I can show you how to do that as well. And that's a good example as well for the in and not in. City. So again, this list is in alphabetical order by default as well, so you can just look for city. I'll check the right-hand box to add a system filter, and I will copy it to get 2. So yeah, we will, let's say, what's a good city? New York. We'll say New York. If we want to look up, again, these are leases, so we want to look up leases that contain the city, New York, or, and, or, and not, or. So if you look up and, that means it will include New York and the second result, which is next to impossible because there's no way that this result will have 2 results. So if I pick Dallas, for example, there is this report will turn no results unless there are somehow a city with that in it, with the New York and Dallas in it. So we would want to pick or here. So in this case, we are going to return leases that have New York or Dallas in their city field. Another way of obtaining this while using just a single system filter, so I will remove the second one, is to use the in or not in. If you use in, we can separate these values now with commas. So we first have to use single quotes around each value. So single quote, new space York, another single quote. Can I make that bigger? It's awful tiny. Is that any easier to see?
Yeah, much better,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, it is.
All right. So yeah, you see we have a single quote around New York, both in the front and the back. And we have now a comma to separate it, and I'll add single quote Dallas.
You've got a double quote there.
I sure do, thank you. Single quote. So this is effectively the same as using 2 system filters with an or separator. This looks up all leases that have a city with values that are either New York or Dallas while using a single line. It's a good way to make some filter lists shorter and more compact, easier to read, especially if you get quite a few on there. It's going to be a bit of a pain to read. The in, that's in, and then there's not in. So we can also look up all cities that do not have New York or Dallas in their city field.
Arthur, one question. If I would leave it like this, and I want to have a report in this case of U.S. cities, it would show me every single city in the U.S. without New York and Dallas.
So there is no restriction on the country right now. So it would show you all leases with any city that is not New York or Dallas at the moment with the way it's currently set up.
Oh, that's an interesting long report, probably.
Yeah, it's going to look pretty weird at the moment. So that's a way to compress, if you will, some of your filters. Any questions regarding in and not in, or the other filter operators such as equals, not equals, starts with, ends with, contains, or does not contain? All right. Zoom out a little bit here. Okay. So next on our list is the Advanced tab. Actually, I apologize. Let me take one step back. So this is an editable report, which means, once again, that we chose some fields that we want to possibly be able to edit, change while looking just at the query without going to the record itself. That also imposes a filter on all of the records, but it doesn't show up here. Once again, to show you that, if we go back to the General tab and pick Options, we saw that we picked an editable query, or report, excuse me, and we chose the state that we wanted to be in, draft. So that imposes a system filter, if you will, that doesn't show up in that Filters tab. Okay? All right, and then we'll move on to the Advanced tab. So the Advanced tab, there are two sections here, Association Filters and Actions. Associations are words or simple sentences that define how records relate to each other. So for example, a lease is has a primary city of Dallas, for example. Association filters let you restrict your results based on the records that the records you're looking up are related to. Apologize, it's kind of convoluted. Does that make sense? So if I were to look up, I can look up cities, for example. Let's stick with that. Once again, I'll go over how to find the module location I want, geography, city. So for city, this is that big list. There's a big list of these simple sentences or descriptions that define the connection between records. Once again, I'll go into detail this later. So we can pick, whoops.
Arthur, how did you open this little window with the associated filters?
Sure. So on the association filters, in the top right of the window, section there rather, you'll see add and delete.
Okay. All right, got
I clicked on add.
Sorry,
Yep.
pretty small.
No worries. I apologize, I skip over that stuff. So once again, module, I'll go with geography, and then I'll pick city. The association type is, you can leave it as all. You will often get duplicates if you do this. You need to restrict it to a single association string description here. So I'm going to pick one that's, just for demonstration, that's not going to work, and I'm going to delete it. But we'll do contains because that one makes sense. So in this case, to describe this, I'm going to be picking, I'm going to be restricting our report on the cities that the leases are associated to. So in this case, I'm picking cities, and they have to be connected by the string of contains. And then I can find that city by clicking on that magnifying glass, and I can pick one. Just pick a random one. I'll pick Baker, for example. That's the record ID. It's not the actual name. So once you've selected it, it's going to, instead of having the name, it's going to bring in the ID. So it's not, just so you know. And that's a simple way of going over that. association filters, I would try and avoid them as much as you can. They apply a lot of, they make reports take longer to run. Sometimes it's necessary. I would try and avoid them if you can. Reverse associations as well, with the new version of TRIRIGA that's coming in. They are basically against the best practices now. So I would completely ignore that for the moment. All right. So you can see when you click OK that fills in now. We're looking up cities that are associated by the contains string in this record, which is the ID, but we picked, I think I picked Aachen when I did it.
So what's the false for?
It's a conditional. Let me show you that. If you pick query, I believe. Yeah, so if you were to filter by a type of query, if you say you wanted to compare it to a list of cities, for example, you would change your filter type to query and find that query that brought up the cities you want to compare to. And the conditional, it's explained here, if there are no results returned, it's not going to use that filter.
Okay,
so if I were to check this,
this is doing a similar thing to the system filter that we just looked at.
Yeah, but it's looking at other records now. This is where it gets kind of intense there. So I'm going to delete this because it's not going to work with ours. And now the actions. So there are a few actions by default that you can add no matter what kind of report you are making. By clicking on this Add button, again, it's in the top right section of the Actions section. You get another pop-up. We can add custom actions, which are if you were creating your own workflows to perform specific tasks, that's what you would use. For your guys' case, you would most likely stick with system add and system delete. I would not use custom or query. So system add is simply an add button to add records of this kind, which should be leases. And system delete is to delete those. You can name the delete button however you'd like. Same with the add button.
And does this just relate to editable queries?
This part specifically, system add and system delete, are available on most types of reports and queries, regular ones, no like graphic ones and whatnot. So you always have system add and system delete. All right, so we'll put add in there. And like I said, you can name it. The name is one that you don't see. It's the name of the function. But the label, which is automatically copied over from the name, is the user-facing one. So format that one to look nice. You can click OK. And secondary action, I would ignore. There's no use for it, simply put. I believe it's being phased out. So we added the system add, which lets us add things, specifically leases, because this is a report about leases. Now, with this being an editable query, we are able to import actions that are available on the record in the current state we selected. So in this case, we have picked try draft. So we can bring in actions that are available on leases in try draft. Let me show you that. So I'm just going to pick a lease that's in draft. Me being an administrative user, I might see a bit more, but so these actions here, review assumptions, even this xtemp, which is to fix stuff, activate, save, and even the ones under more, apply template, copy, delete, save and close. These are all actions that we can bring into an editable report. So back on the report now, I'll go back to the Advanced tab, and I will import state actions up here at the top right. This will bring up a new window, and we can see those actions I just looked at. For draft, we would most likely want to issue and save the records, so I'll add those in. And this adds the actions to the bottom here. And issues being activate. So we can also change the order that these are in by clicking on these arrows. see here. All right, so I will save that. And then the last tab, which is where used. We're not going to see anything in here now, but on other reports, if you want to find out, if it's used somewhere, if you think it is used somewhere and you're not sure, this will show you, so this other usage will show you places where it's used on forms or navigation items, such as the portals. These are portals here. Any of these pages that you click on come to. So it'll tell you if it's used on any of these. And workflows will list the workflows that it's used in, if there are any. It's still searching for it, and we know that this isn't used in any workflows because we haven't put in any. But if there were, it would list them there. Let's see if it lets me change. Yeah, and once again, this does a pretty hefty search throughout the entire system, and it's going to take a minute. There we go. So we can see that no usage is found in either any navigation items or any portals or any workflows. And if there were, you can export that usage. I believe it comes out as a Excel document. Yeah, comma separated one, but yes. All right, just to go over now as a review, we have named our report, picked our result size. We have made it editable. You use try draft. We have added a few fields that we're going to look up as columns. So we have the ID, we added the head count, and we added the name. Also with these, if you don't like the order that they're in the top right above them, you can move them around with these. Move up, move down, move to top, move to bottom, or just remove them. You do that by selecting them and then clicking on what you would like to do. So I want to move the internal head count to the bottom. This correlates as the top being the leftmost column and the bottom being the rightmost column. All right, go to the order and group, verify what we have here. So our leases will be sorted in ascending order by name. And we should have some sums listed regarding the head count at the bottom. Filters. So we're going to look up, we added the name filter so we can search for a name, and we left it as contains, which lets us look up any value within the name field by typing it in there and pressing apply filters. The system filters, we are making sure we get all leases that are not in the city of New York or Dallas. We use that with the not in operator. So the advanced tab. We have also added a few actions here. We added the ability to add a new lease, activate them, and save them. And now if we save it, just make sure we're good, and we run the report, should have a nice list. So, we can zoom out a little bit. All right, let me check something real quick.
You're in our production environment, Arthur.
Yeah, I'm not changing anything. It's just I want to make sure I have relevant data. All right, so once again, so to go over that, we have now found 40 leases with our criteria. These are all in draft. We have excluded any of them that happen to be in New York or Dallas. We have marked the name field as editable. That means if we so choose to, we could change the name, but we won't be doing that in production. And we also have returned the internal head count and the lease ID. You'll see the internal head count at the bottom will be summarized in this gray bar. Unfortunately, a bunch of zeros add up to 0.
Yeah, and you said this is editable. Is it editable only for the report, or does it actually relate back to the record itself?
It'll relate back to the changes made on here, as long as they're saved with the save action we put on here, will be transferred to the record.
Okay.
We have returned 40 leases that are in draft, and we are able to edit the name if we want. And we can add a new lease if we want. This will open up a new window that's empty.
I'm a bit nervous about you doing this in production, Arthur.
Okay, I'll close that then. So I'll delete this immediately. You can move to test if you like, but there's no data being changed right now.
What was the question? What advantage would there be to changing it now?
What do you mean?
No, you asked?
No, Sue's nervous about me being in production with this, which is understandable. So this report I will delete now.
If it wasn't editable, it's fine, but
I mean, we can simply uncheck that, and we need to remove those actions now that we added because they won't work, simply put. So I check them, and then I click the delete button to delete them, and that removes them from the action list. And on the general tab, I unmarked editable from yes to no. Then we save it. We should have quite a bit more results now. Which columns didn't change. I'm going to run the report. We now have 4,400 leases returning since we're not restricted to just draft anymore. We now have, once again, we can search by name. So if I want to bring up, pick one I just saw, I'll pick up Rainbow Drive. I'll bring up Rainbow Drive. I can search by that. And we narrowed it down to just one lease. If there were multiple leases with Rainbow Drive in it, multiple would show. One thing with these filters, there is a wildcard character. You can use the % symbol. So let's say there's a Rainbow Drive and maybe a Rainbow Avenue, for example. If we want to look them both up, we can put Rainbow %, and it'll bring up anything that has the word Rainbow and anything after it. And if we delete that filter, it'll once again return the full result set. And the sum, again, on the right-hand side, I believe I picked a field that has all zeros in it, will add up, which is 0, unfortunately. All right. Any questions here? If not, that's the basics on how to make a report. The next step would be to get into how to best find the information you're looking for, how to locate the fields within the array of records, and how to find the associations that they connect the two.
Oh. Yeah, I think it's probably worth saying that one of the things that we would normally put in the system filters is that we would tell the reports to ignore terminated leases or to only look at active revision in progress, review in progress leases. So that's how.
If you want, I can demo that if you'd like.
Yeah, if you could, Arthur, that would be great.
Sure.
Because I mean, that's the sort of thing that guys are going to need to be doing.
All right, so I'm back on the report setup here. I will go to the filters tab. I'm going to remove this city filter. And since we're now going to be looking up by status, we need to find the status field. So to clarify what the status field is on a lease, do I have one open already? Yes, I do. So that's not a good one. There are a few different status fields on these leases, so we need to be careful about which one we're looking up. It completely depends on what you're looking up. So we do see the contract status and the system status. What Sue was referring to was the system status. So I'll open up this lease here and show you where that field is. So we're right at the top. You see status of active. So Sue, you said active, revision in progress, and review in progress.
Yeah.
Right. So you find out what those are by looking at the leases, and you see what the status is here. So we know that's what active looks like. We can look up for review in progress. And it's just text. So you just have to know what you're typing in to set up the system filters.
Yeah, so review in progress is basically anything that's going through the approval process.
Mm-hmm.
And revision in progress is anything that you've revised to amend.
So we know we're not looking for the regular status, not the contract status. So scroll through the list and get to the S's, and we see just status here. We're adding a system filter, so we need to add or check the right box, and that'll again add it here. And this is a case where it is good to use the in operator because we have multiple values, and we can add multiple values within one filter by using the in. So again, we are going to zoom in. We're going to surround the values with single quotes. So single quote, and then comment in between, and another single quote, and review in progress. Now this is case sensitive, so I capitalized the I there, but I need to double check and make sure that's actually capitalized there. And it is, so that should be fine. Then I need a single quote to wrap that one in. All right, and then we need revision in progress as well. So revision. I'm also, once again, going to double check and look up revision in progress and make sure that I is capitalized in the middle. And it is.
Okay, I have a question. How do you know when it's case sensitive and when it's not? If you're not an administrator of the system.
It will tell you if it looks up case sensitive or not, but in and not in always look up case sensitive. It doesn't say it, but that's how it works. So in and not in are always case sensitive, but if it's not in or not in, it'll let you choose between case sensitive or not.
And then I'm going to go back to asking in one more question too. Why did you use the equals instead of the and operator?
To simplify it, because if we were to use equals, we would have at least 3 rows. I can show you what that look like. It's in big reports that have multiple filters, it'll get kind of hard to read through and find out what's going on. So if you shorten it as much as you can, it'll be easier to figure out later on. So active, review in progress, and revision in progress. Any other ones you want on there, Sue?
Let's limit it by country.
Sure. Save that real quick. And we'll do equals for country. Show you what that looks like. So we find country in this list, again, in alphabetical order. On county, there we go. And it adds it to the bottom, and you can see it automatically adds an and filter, or operator, excuse me. So country, do we want it to be one country? Or multiple countries?
Yeah, let's do United States, Canada, and Virgin Islands. So we're just looking at North American data.
All right, so I will use equals for this to show you how to set up multiple equals filter if you'd like to do it that way. So equals is case sensitive by default because it has to equal 100%. So we need to look up United States. So you type in United States. This filter doesn't require you to use the single quotes. That is only on the in or not in. Now we need to add another country filter. So we would make sure it's selected. And copy it. And it copies it word for word. So it'll bring over United States. So delete that out and add Canada. And then once more, make sure you have the right one selected and copy it. And you said Virgin Islands?
Yeah.
Okay, Virgin Islands. Just want to double check, and since it is equals, it is case sensitive.
You can only put one country in each one of those.
Right. If you're using equals, yes, you can only put one in each one. And since we want to look up all of these countries, we need to make sure we change this join operator here to be or. So here's where it gets a little bit interesting. The first.
I have another question, Arthur. I realized when you use the in and not in operator, then you need to have the single quotes.
Hmm?
If you use the equals operator, you don't need the single quotes.
Correct.
Is there any kind of, I don't know, checklist when to do what? Because I'm sure next week I have forgotten part of what you have told us today.
I can put one together for you. I don't believe one exists.
In the or, but that doesn't narrow the list down. It's just including them in.
1 second. Okay. I'm sorry. One more time. Yeah, I was right on the last one. Sorry. One more time.
Okay, so where I was headed with it is with the join operators, you used and then or, and
right.
or again. That or does not actually do a narrowing function at this point.
Correct. It defines the fact that we want to use or because we're trying to look up multiple values. There's also one more step to this. Since we want to look up the status separately from the country, we need to separate the values, and the best way to do that is to add in parentheses to make sure that the ors don't interact with the and by accident. Because if you with this one, it'll work okay, but when you get to a lot of filters in there, you need to make sure you separate your ors and surround them with parentheses.
And can I just say, for us, it's much easier if the way we've written our reports is that if we wanted to just filter on United States, Canada, and Virgin Islands, we've done it on the basis of in, so that we've only got the one filter.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, it's simpler. It's simpler to manage.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about the parentheses then.
The only thing that I'm struggling on, being an old database guy, is the or operation almost always narrows it. It's like that whole thing I said a couple of years ago when we had our meeting. So I have to get over that in this particular case.
Yeah, in this case, yes, or opens up the result list, if you will, instead of narrowing it. So we surrounded this with parentheses to describe it as basically one function by itself. So we're looking up statuses that are in active, review in progress, or revision in progress, and countries that are United States, or Canada, or Virgin Islands. Make sense?
Uh-huh.
So if you save that and run it, when you save it, you see the graphics update here to show you that it's own section here. Let's run this.
And I have a quick question. Let's, just for the fun of it, say I did not properly put the quotes around the operation.
Yeah.
Would that
if you didn't put the quotes around here, it would just return 0 results.
Okay.
It would actually it would give you an error first, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Say, yeah, you need the value for in and not in must be comma separated and surrounded by single quotes.
Okay.
So you'll get an error first.
So good. I mean, if we did not do that, it tells you that there's a problem.
Mm-hmm. And I've also I'll put a document together to elaborate on the operators as well. And
it does need to be double delimited, so it has the single quotes around the text and a comma in between it.
Yep, single quotes defined. Yep, because yeah, that's how it tells if there's spaces and whatnot in there between all the commas. All right, so I'll save it and we'll run it. See if there's any problems with anything I typed. We now have returned 2,421 leases, and they are limited by the filters we put in. So they're either active, review in progress, or revision in progress, and they're by these countries. Let's actually do something so we can verify that. We're going to add those fields in. So we're going to jump back to the columns tab, and I will find the status field first, or we'll do country first. Once again, it's alphabetical order, so country, and then since it popped in right under the ID, I want to move it down 1. And let's find the status field. Check the box. Adds on the right-hand side. So now with the country and the status added to the columns, we can actually verify that our information is correct. So I'll save that. And now I'll run it once more. All right, and here we can see now that since we limited the country to Canada, United States, and Virgin Islands, we can verify that those filters actually applied correctly. So we can just scroll through here and see that we don't have anything from China, for example. We also see that we have their status is either active, revision in progress, review in progress. They're in there, I promise. You can sort by these fields in ascending or descending after it's run by just clicking on the column title. So if I wanted to sort by country, for example, just click on country. And it'll first sort it by ascending. And then if you click it again, it'll switch to descending. One Virgin Islands there. And if you click it once more, it'll go back to the default sort. It'll remove any ascending or descending.
And you can do, no, I thought you could do the same with the status before, but I guess not.
Yeah, so yeah, you can do the same with status as well. If you click on it, it'll switch from country to status.
Yep.
There we go.
Very cool.
The active first then. Yep. All right. Any questions there? It's a very simple report to get data from one business object.
From one data object, that's what you said?
Yep. And to be honest, the next section, in half an hour, I won't be able to go through it all. I don't think it would be a good idea for me to get started on it until we have more time to go through it.
And what you're talking about then would be like mapping between.
Yeah, so on the general tab here, yep, we can add other business objects, and they branch off the main business object. And you can create more branches and add more data. Soon, Jennifer and everyone else, I feel that's best left for next week when we have much more time. Is that okay?
Yep, that's
yeah,
fine.
makes sense.
Do you feel you've reached a break point now then with the training, Arthur?
Definitely. Yes. Is
Break
there
now
any questions or anything?
Okay.
Any questions? Anything you want to see again? Anything you want to me to clarify?
This is going to be more like riding a bike to me. You can show me how to ride it, but I'm going to have to sit down and figure out how to ride it. And
yeah, and I would seriously recommend, guys, if you want to practice with this, can I ask you to do it in test rather than in production?
And I'll do this in test next week, so we can actually interact with things.
Yeah, just the last thing. You've created the report. Can it be saved as a document?
If you run the report on the corners, you can export it.
Okay.
So we'll see export in the top right here. And by default, it exports it into Excel. So
okay.
I'm going to open it here.
Yeah, and once we've changed the platform, the export will be slightly different. It will just give you a little box at the bottom left-hand side to click on. So it just looks slightly different when you export it with the new platform.
Yep.
Okay.
You'll see that when you're in test.
We'll see when we export it, it has pretty much identical same format, but it includes all of the results in here. It's not just that page, so we see you have quite a bit.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's just laid it out in the columns.
Yep. All right.
Okay, and then the only other question I'd have is, because I'm going to probably want to try to do this, is how do I get to the test environment, which is not for you, but it is for Sue or whomever can help me.
Yeah, so I can send out an email with the information. I don't know, Sue and Jennifer, would you want to wait until after this weekend to play with that, or I mean,
No,
it's up to you guys. It doesn't really matter.
As long as people are using test, I don't see it's a problem at all. That's what it's there for.
Yeah.
So it's literally if you look at the URL that you have for the live database, which is hertz.oncfi.com, what you need to put in is hertztest.oncfi.com.
Oh, okay.
And you'll see here it's a little different. It's a newer version.
Yeah, it's a newer version. It'll be what TRIRIGA will look like on Monday when we finished upgrading the first phase. But you will need to alter your browser settings to go into test. Or download
and I can send out an email to everyone if you'd like, because also I imagine the passwords are a bit outdated probably, so you might have trouble logging in.
Yeah, I believe they are. Yeah.
Okay, well, we can always change the passwords.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'll send an email to everyone on the call with the URL information. If you choose to use Internet Explorer, the settings you'll have to adjust on your computer. I would recommend Chrome or Firefox for this environment. I don't know if there's any restrictions on what you're allowed to use, but either one of those is fine.
We've already done a set of instructions for users, Arthur, because obviously
perfect.
they'll need to change it. They'll need to change it on Monday, obviously.
Yeah.
For when we go live on the new platform.
I'll be sending that out today or tomorrow to all my users.
Okay. Okay, it'd probably be worth you getting it to your users in time for them to check they can actually access test, Jennifer, rather than have a problem on Monday.
Sure.
Especially your team.
Yeah.
Alrighty then. One last time. Any questions? Anything you want to go back over? We have an extra half hour allotted still. Oh, all right. So I will. I'll put together a checklist for the defining those operators. I will also outline how those parentheses work a little bit, so you can use the best use them if you have to use them. And I also have a document. I have a few of these actually that we'll be going over. Sue, I know you asked for this a long time ago. It describes. I'm going to have one for each of these items. So this is going to be useful next Monday, and I'll send it to you guys this weekend. It defines, what is related to the lease, because we're going to be looking up related information from the lease, and also what is related from each one of these as well. So I'll be sending that out probably later tonight after I get them all formatted. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Alrighty then. No other questions. I will end this.